They said it was impossible. A civilization appearing from nowhere. Pyramids that defy explanation. Mummies that preserve secrets. Hieroglyphs that hide the truth. For centuries, we believed the lie that Egypt just appeared. But deep beneath the sand, buried in forgotten caves, scattered across ancient sites, the evidence tells a different story. A story so shocking, so incredible, that it will destroy everything you thought you knew. This isn't about aliens. This isn't about lost civilizations. This is about the most dangerous truth of all. The truth about us. Welcome to the real Egypt.
Part 1. The First Footsteps. 120,000 years in the making. Our story begins in a time so ancient that modern humans had barely learned to walk upright. 120,000 years ago, along the life-giving waters of the Nile, the first chapter of Egyptian civilization was being written in stone. The Acheulean culture, named after a site in France but flourishing here in Africa, was creating humanity's first technology. Crude hand axes, rough-hewn from volcanic rock, but representing something revolutionary. The moment humans decided they could improve on nature. These weren't just tools. They were proof that our ancestors possessed something no other creature had. The ability to envision, to plan, to create something that had never existed before. Fast forward 40,000 years to the Hormuzan culture between 42,000 and 16,000 BCE. These ancient Nile dwellers were refining their craft, developing more sophisticated tools, establishing the first permanent settlements along the river. Imagine, generation after generation, father teaching son, mother teaching daughter, each adding their own small innovation, their own tiny improvement, building a foundation of knowledge that would last for millennia. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. This was human civilization, taking its first deliberate steps. Part 2. The Agricultural Revolution, the game changer. But around 5000 BCE, something extraordinary happened. Something that would change the Nile Valley and human history forever. Agriculture. Not invented in Egypt, but imported from the Middle East. This revolutionary technology didn't just feed people, it transformed them. The Naqada culture, these ingenious ancestors, developed sickles for harvesting wild grains. They created grinding stones for processing them. They were taking the first steps toward controlling their food supply rather than simply hoping nature would provide. Suddenly, for the first time in human history, people could stay in one place. They could build, they could plan, they could imagine a future beyond the next hunt, the next harvest. This was the moment when wandering nomads became builders of civilization. The Fayum culture emerged, small communities led by what archaeologists call micro-band chiefs. The first leaders, the first social hierarchies, the first glimpse of the pharaohs who would rule Egypt for 3,000 years. From these humble farming villages, along the banks of the eternal Nile, the greatest civilization the ancient world had ever seen was about to be born. Part 3. The Badarian Mystery. Death becomes art. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation wasn't in how these ancient people lived. It was in how they died. The Badarian culture, dating to the end of the 5th millennium BCE, wasn't just farming and making pottery. They were confronting the greatest mystery of human existence. What happens when we die? Their burial sites reveal something extraordinary. Oval-shaped graves, carefully arranged, filled with precious objects, ivory, stone tools, food offerings. This wasn't just burial, this was belief. For the first time, we see evidence of complex spiritual beliefs about an afterlife, about a world beyond death, the very foundation of the religious thinking that would create the pyramids, the mummies, the elaborate tomb complexes that made Egypt legendary. But more than spirituality, these graves reveal something else: social stratification. Some graves contained precious materials. Others were simple. The beginning of a class system, of hierarchy, of the divine kingship that would define Pharaonic Egypt. The Badarians weren't just burying their dead, they were burying them with hope, with faith, with the absolute conviction that death was not the end, but the beginning of something greater. Part 4, Naqada 1, the birth of trade and ambition. By 3900 BCE, the scattered farming villages of the Nile were about to become something much more ambitious. Welcome to Naqada, the culture that would lay the foundation for everything that made Egypt great. These weren't just farmers anymore. They were traders, explorers, entrepreneurs, establishing trade routes that stretched deep into Nubia, bringing back gold, obsidian, exotic materials that had never been seen in the Nile Valley. Imagine, 4,000 years before Julius Caesar, before the Roman Empire, before most civilizations even existed, Egyptian traders were organizing expeditions, negotiating deals, establishing supply chains that spanned hundreds of miles. This was commerce. This was capitalism. This was the birth of international trade in the ancient world. And their craftsmanship, extraordinary. The distinctive red pottery with white cross-line decorations, so beautiful, so precisely made, that archaeologists can identify Naqada 1 sites from pottery shards alone. These ancient artisans weren't just making functional objects. They were making art. They were expressing creativity. They were proving that humans didn't just need to survive, they needed to create beauty. This was the moment when practical necessity became artistic expression. Part 5, Naqada 2, the explosion of civilization. But if Naqada I planted the seeds of civilization on Naqada 2, between 3450 and 3300 BCE, was the explosion. This wasn't gradual change anymore. This was rapid, dramatic, revolutionary transformation. The Naqada culture exploded across Egypt, from Nubia in the south to the Nile Delta in the north, absorbing other cultures, integrating different peoples, creating the first truly unified Egyptian identity. Social hierarchy became dramatic. The difference between rich and poor, between rulers and ruled, became vast. Cemetery sites reveal graves filled with incredible wealth, alongside simple burials with almost nothing. Professional craftsmen emerged, specialists who did nothing but create beautiful objects. The famous D-ware pottery, mass-produced but elegant. The beginning of industrial production. 4,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. And copper copper became widespread, no longer just stone tools, but metal axes, metal knives, metal weapons. The Bronze Age was beginning right here in the Nile Valley. This was the moment when Egypt stopped being a collection of farming villages, and started becoming an empire. Part 6. Naqada 3, the birth of kings, up by 3300 BCE. Egypt was on the verge of something unprecedented in human history. Naqada 3, also called Dynasty 0, the age of the first kings, no longer tribal chiefs, no longer village elders. These were rulers with real power over vast territories, the commanding armies, the controlling trade, making decisions that affected thousands of people. The art of this period reveals their obsessions: victory in battle, control over chaos, the divine nature of kingship, themes that would dominate Egyptian royal ideology for the next 3,000 years. The famous Narmer palette, one of the most important artifacts in human history, shows us a king, possibly the first pharaoh, wearing the crowns of both Upper and Lower Egypt. This single piece of carved stone documents the moment at when Egypt became Egypt. Not through alien intervention, not through lost civilizations, not through mysterious catastrophes, but through the accumulated wisdom, ambition, and genius of hundreds of generations, building on each other's achievements, creating something magnificent, step by step, innovation by innovation. This was the birth of the Pharaohs. Part 7. The pottery tells the story. But how do we know all this? How can archaeologists read the story of civilization in broken pieces of clay? Because pottery, humble, everyday pottery, is civilization's most honest witness. Every culture, every generation, every artistic tradition leaves its signature in the clay. And Egyptian pottery tells a story so clear and so undeniable that it reads like a timeline of human progress. The black-topped red pottery of Badarian culture, distinctive, unique, unmistakable. Then the white cross-line decorations of Naqada 1, more sophisticated, more artistic, showing growing cultural confidence. Then the revolutionary D-ware of Naqada 2, mass-produced, standardized, proving the existence of professional workshops, specialized labor, organized industry, and the decorative motifs, incredible, simple animal scenes evolving into complex narratives, boats, human figures, stories being told in clay, the beginning of Egyptian art, Egyptian mythology, Egyptian civilization. Every pottery shard, every decorative pattern, every technological innovation builds the case for gradual, natural human development. No mystery, no alien intervention, just human creativity, expanding, evolving, building, generation after generation. Part 8. The Gebel El-Arak knife, proof of connection, but perhaps the most remarkable single artifact that destroys any notion of isolated Egyptian development, is a knife. Not just any knife. The Gebel El-Arak knife, a masterpiece of craftsmanship that tells a story of international connection. 4,000 years before the modern world, the blade, made from flint, using a technique called ripple flaking, so sophisticated, so precise, that it creates wave-like patterns, requiring master-level skill and possibly copper tools to achieve. But the handle, the ivory handle, tells an even more incredible story. Carved scenes showing Egyptian warriors, but also a central figure wearing Mesopotamian dress, flanked by lions in the classic Master of Beasts motif, directly related to art from AncientEgypt. It was an active participant in the vibrant, interconnected world of ancient humanity. Part 9. The technology timeline. stone to metal to mastery. Follow the tools, and you follow the story of human progress. From crude Acheulean hand axes 120,000 years ago, rough-hewn from volcanic stone, functional but simple, to the sophisticated flint tools of the Naqada culture, sickles for harvesting, grinding stones for processing grain, the first agricultural technology, to the masterwork flint daggers of late Naqada, so perfectly crafted, so artistically beautiful, that they were clearly ceremonial, royal, symbols of power and prestige. But then, copper, the game changer, the metal that would transform warfare, agriculture, craftsmanship, everything, starting simply in Naqada 1, small copper objects, jewelry, decorations, then expanding in Naqada 2, copper tools, copper weapons, so copper becoming central to Egyptian technology. This progression, this evolution, is exactly what we'd expect from natural human development. Each generation building on the last, each innovation enabling the next innovation. No sudden jumps, no mysterious appearances of advanced technology, just brilliant human minds, working with available materials, constantly improving, constantly innovating, constantly reaching for something better. Part 10. The timeline of unification from chaos to kingdom. And so, after hundreds of thousands of years and after countless generations, after millennium upon millennium of gradual progress, around 3150 BCE, it all came together. The early dynastic period, Dynasty 1 and 2, the unification of Egypt, the beginning of pharaonic civilization, the start of 3,000 years of greatness. But this wasn't a beginning. This was a culmination. The unified state that would build the pyramids, the kingdom that would create hieroglyphs, the civilization that would mummify pharaohs and build temples that still stand today. All of it. Every achievement, every innovation, every moment of genius was built on the foundation of this incredible, unbroken, evolutionary story. From stone tools to copper weapons, from hunting bands to agricultural villages, from tribal chiefs to divine pharaohs, from simple pottery to royal art, from local traditions to international trade. This is the real story of Egyptian civilization. Not mystery, but methodology. Not alien, but ancestors. Not catastrophe, but creativity. The greatest civilization of the ancient world, built by human hands, human minds, human determination, over thousands of generations. So here we stand, at the end of our archaeological journey, having traced the rise of civilization, not through myths and mysteries, but through evidence. The pottery shards scattered across ancient sites, the stone tools buried in river sediment, the grave goods placed lovingly beside the dead, the art carved into ivory and stone. All of it tells the same story, a story of gradual, inevitable, magnificent human progress. The mystery of Egyptian civilization was never a mystery at all. It was simply history. This is the story of us. This is the story of what we can achieve when we build, generation after generation, on the dreams and determination of those who came before. This is the story of civilization itself, rising from the Nile, built to last forever.